I'll try, for once, not to talk about daylight, or at least not talk about daylight specifically. I want to talk about a built environment, but I want to talk mostly about people. This was something I was fascinated in my studies. In my studies, I was trained as an architect, and everybody was actually talking about comfort to make a comfortable space. And at some point, I actually jumped up on this paper written by Italian designer Bruno Munari, and the quest for comfort in an uncomfortable chair. I mean, you could see it in the pictures. And actually, he says everybody wants beautiful furniture, and so the true function of a chair, for example, comfort, goes to hell. So is there a contradiction between having something which is comfortable and something that is beautiful? And what are people satisfied with? And are these conditions actually conducive to our health or our well-being? And are these energy saving? Oh my God, there's so many priorities in the built environment. So I'm a scientist, or pretend to be a scientist. So, okay, let's do a proper hypothesis. And my hypothesis is that there could be significant differences, spatially and temporally, between the design and operation strategies for energy conservation, the conditions that are needed to perform activities in a state of comfort, what contributes to satisfaction with the indoor environment, what occupants need to be healthy, and the settings conducive to feelings of well-being. We see everywhere this strategy has enhanced people's comfort and well-being. Okay, but can one strategy meet two different human outcomes? Are they the same, or maybe not? And on the other hand, we live built environments that are very complex. I mean, we have daylight, we have electric light, we have heat, we have sound, and they all come together. So the second hypothesis is that various environmental stimuli may interact or compete with each other at different spatiotemporal resolutions to affect perception of comfort, satisfaction, health, and well-being, driving user responses and environmental behaviors. Environmental behaviors are linked to energy performance. So essentially, we live into very mixed environments. So how can we resolve the responses that we give to each of the environmental stimuli to whom we are exposed to? So I was lucky. I was very lucky in my career to be able to work with many people. So we published this paper in 2020. Actually, just 2 days before the spread of the pandemic. Joe Allen actually called us and said, guys, we are not coming out with this paper considering the enormity of what we're facing right now. And Joe is here, Lisa Ashton is here, Pavel Barkowski is here. So again, thank you for all the lectures that they have taught me in the years. And then another paper came up recently with Seda Castle, Paulina Martinez, and Dusan Lissina on what is next, a new conceptual model for comfort, satisfaction, health, and well-being, which is what I'm more focusing upon today. So let's start with you. How do you feel? Hungry, tired, whatever. But let's see that I'm focusing on your comfort, satisfaction, health, and well-being. So as a scientist, I would actually take a number of surveys, I would distribute them, and on the surveys, I would ask, are you comfortable with the conditions in this room? Are you satisfied with the conditions in this room? Do you think the conditions in this room enhance your health? Do you think the conditions in this room enhance your well-being? I could do that. Likert scale, distribute it, then analyze the data, new paper. Yes, but what are you responding to? So if I asked you, are you comfortable in this room? First of all, you may wonder, okay, thermally, visually, acoustically, altogether, what? Are you satisfied? So very likely what you would do, you'd actually go towards the mean, try to differentiate a little bit your answers just to make sure that you don't think that you cheated, and then that's it. And this is actually what we see in surveys. But you cannot really respond immediately to these 4 questions because these 4 questions tap onto different levels of your neural and perceptual systems. So they tap onto your sensation, which is the ability to process stimuli through your sensory patterns, like light, heat, sound. They tap onto your perception, which is the ability to experience, recognize, organize, and interpret sensory stimuli. But they tap onto your cognition, which is your intellectual brain-mediated ability that is related to knowledge, judgment, and decision-making. So answering these questions that you would do very simply, just sort of, putting your sign onto the scale, is not that easy. And then we have to really understand what we mean when we talk about comfort, satisfaction, health, and well-being. So let's start with definitions. The most common definition of comfort. Thermal comfort, well, it can be applied to many other domains, is the condition of mind that expresses satisfaction. Oh, no. We said that comfort and satisfaction are different. You cannot say that thermal comfort is the condition of mind that expresses satisfaction. But anyway, with the thermal environment, then it's assessed by subjective evaluation. What do you see? You see a mug, but immediately your brain is thinking it's winter. Immediately your brain is thinking it's cold. And I reach out for a cup of coffee to feel warmer, which means that nothing else matters. Your light, your acoustic, nothing matters. You're resolving all of your sensory stimuli into the thermal environment, and you're actually feeling comfortable. But feeling comfortable means that this is a very transient sensation. Actually, it's not even a sensation because you're mediating with your brain. You're reaching for the coffee, so you perceive it as being warmer. But at the moment, the only thing that matters is your thermal sensation. So it's monotonically resolved. You have resolved your comfort to your thermal perception. And you are integrating all of the stimuli that you receive from the environment. Will that make you comfortable after 10 minutes? No. It's getting colder. Comfort is transient, is momentary, is context and subject related. It can only exist right here and right now. Satisfaction. Let's move on. Let's be quick. Oxford Dictionary satisfaction implies a state of mind that is driven by gratification from a need or desire as it affects or motivates behavior. As you can see, we are going up. No longer related with perception. They are brain-mediated. Satisfaction is a cognitive process. A survey. How was your day today? So to respond, how was your day, what do I have to do is to reconcile all of your temporary state throughout the days, try to understand if the day has met your expectations, or if the day actually is going to build up to your future experiences. So essentially, satisfaction is an active cognitive judgment that indicates how much the environment meets your expectation and your needs, which are individual. Because you may have completely different lived experience of the same space, but also you may project to different experiences that are yet to come. They are very individual to you. So it's a projection to forthcoming events, which is based on anticipations and opportunities, and is an enjoyment which is mediated by experience and projected to a future situation. And Marcel mentioned the experience and the expectation as part of the way in which humans resolve their stressors. Okay, health, the most famous definition. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Now, again, comfort is satisfaction, and health is well-being. It's getting a little bit confused, isn't it? And anyway, it's not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. It's an X-ray. I'm taking an X-ray of your hands right now. So what matters in there is, of course, the functioning of the body. We know that health is not just the body. There's much more dimensions involved in health. Is your mind, is your functioning well, but also your confidence, your social connection impacts your state of health. But then it's a dynamic state. It's an X-ray. But had I broken my wrist in my youth, that would show. Which means that with respect to comfort, not only current states matter, but also consideration of history of exposures. Now we come to well-being, getting this quote for Stevens and Manchanda, 2010. The well-being of people is defined in terms of their health, comfort, and happiness, from the directly measurable to the unmeasurable. Remember what I said before. The strategy announces comfort and well-being. It looks here that well-being is much more complex than comfort. There's many more dimensions involved. Well-being is the light at the end of the tunnel. It's your aspirations. It's where you're going, where you are projected forward. It's a cognitive process. There's nothing cognitive on comfort. Comfort is a perception. It's a brain-mediated response to a sensory stimulus. But this is a cognitive process that measures long-term satisfaction and, of course, encompasses health, comfort, quality of life. It's a multidimensional nature, physical, functional, social, mental. It's a combination of flourishing and thriving, happiness and moods, but effects which are sustained over time. And that's one thing that matters, time something that we don't consider generally in buildings. So let's put it all together. This is why we propose what we call the NEXT model. It's an acronym. I love acronyms. N is the number of dimensions we are considering. So the visual, the acoustics, the thermal, the sensorial, the hypersensorial. EX is experience and expectations. And T is time. So we just put it on a graph. We put it on a graph where the N is on the y-axis, the X is on the x-axis, and the T is on the Z. So the very first step is comfort. Instantaneous, right here, right now, and monotonically resolved. There's only one dimension. Second up is satisfaction, because your experience and expectations count much more than what you're feeling right here and right now. Health implies much more dimensions than simply comfort, but also history of exposures are much more important. And then the final element of this model is actually the well-being that encompasses all of them and in a way is projected towards your future. Okay, good. We got this published, so we convinced some reviewers that this work was sort of worth just getting a sip of water, getting it all out. But what does it mean? So what are the implications for practice, for research, for policies? What are the changes that we want to implement? Tomati di Lampedusa, allow me, I'm Italian. If we want things to stay as they are, as the building industry generally does, things will have to continuously change. So we need to change, but what? How? How do we change the state of things? Change is implicit in buildings. There's nothing static about buildings, temperature, surface temperature, sort of luminance distribution throughout the day. I mean, just look at this space. It changes all the time. But there's nothing static in humans. Just think at the alternation of your metabolic cycles, cortisol, melatonin, alertness, body temperature. So we are applying a very static way of looking at buildings to something that is very strongly dynamic. So how do we foster this change? Well, Heraclitus, change is the only constant thing in life. Just to give an example, the most sort of easy one, the Barbie doll from the 1950s to today. And that is a sign of inclusion because the Barbie doll has had to adapt to the times. But change is not often necessary. And as Henry Ford said, is not necessarily a sign of progress. The Big Pen has never, ever changed since 1955. And I would like to see in your bags how many of you still have a Big Pen and you're very happy with it. On the other end, are we fostering here a change in technology or a change in approach? Because the worst thing we can do, and the worst thing we actually do, is to apply old approaches with new technologies. And I want to have one example. How many of you did have a BlackBerry about 15 years ago? I loved it. But you know what? It failed. Why did the BlackBerry fail? I loved this thing, but it failed. Because the BlackBerry was applying a very old approach, it's just a typewriter, to a new technology, with a new technology. So in a way, there is a bit of a dichotomy. So do we need to be innovative or do we be creative? This is something I'm borrowing from Luc de Brabander, who is a technologist and philosopher from Belgium. He actually says that if we think of innovation, it means that we want to change reality. But if we want to be creative, we have to change our perception of reality. What do you see there? It's a cube in a corner. We all agree on that, right? What do you see there? Something has changed. But we haven't changed the reality. We have only changed the way in which we look at it, right? So maybe this is what we need to do in the built environment. The next model, comfort, satisfaction, health, and well-being, they belong to different levels of our neural system, and they actually require different approaches in the built environment. And in terms of assessment of user experience, well, if you're using right now surveys, how do you feel right now? That's comfort. has nothing to do with your satisfaction, has nothing to do with your health, well, maybe, but it depends on what you're actually measuring, and certainly nothing to do with your well-being. On the other hand, if you do a transversal or a longitudinal study, how was your day? How did you feel in the winter season? That tells you about the satisfaction. Your expectations, have they been met? What are the projections to future events? Also, give attention to semantics. I mean, and we have surveys that we translate from one language to the other, and then stress and strain are actually very different. And thank you, Marcel, for reminding us of the importance of being very careful about understanding that what the experimenter means is what the participant understands. And then also, what are we actually measuring? Sensation. So it's a response to a sensory stimuli. Perception, their interpretation to the sensation they have been exposed to, or cognition, what anticipates their behavior. And then finally, sensors and tools, be very careful, particularly now that we have all of these things. I'm measuring my comfort, not really. Probably what I'm measuring is a proxy that can tell about my state of health, but let's just make sure that this is what I'm measuring right now, and we're all aware of it. In terms of regulation and standards, you see on the one hand, standardized environmental conditions, one climate for everybody, and on the other hand, individual responses. So everybody needs to have attention to their own climate, where they sit, etc. I'm also a bit provocative in terms of not agreeing with indoor environmental qualities, but that's for another presentation, another stage. Building regulations need to be less prescriptive. Building regulations, they need to allow for adaptability. They need to understand that building users are different. Building users have different needs, different expectations. Buildings are made for different functions, and we have to make sure that we are all aware of it, but also we are aware that building functions change, and they change very quickly, especially if we now have to deal with the renovation way, anticipating what will be the use of the future, not only today, not only tomorrow, but in 50 years, and what will be the need of people in 50 years. Probably they will all artificial intelligence driven, but I don't know, I don't want to go into that. And then finally, make sure that we consider different spatio-temporal resolutions. What we measure instantaneously is something completely different to what we measure over a season. And then finally, design criteria and certification. Okay, I want to take a breath, because I'm saying it. Comfort is not a prerequisite of satisfaction, nor of health, nor of well-being. Marcel has been saying that for a while now, not only Marcel, Philomena Bloisen, and Martin Lichtenberg, and so forth. A temporary drift away from the comfort zone might be more satisfactory and healthier. So not being in comfort is good. You're all hungry now, right? And you're going to enjoy a beautiful meal. The only reason why you're going to enjoy and find comfort in your meal is because you're hungry now. So you are in discomfort. Just accept that. And then finally, focusing on dynamic and variable human outcomes may actually ultimately enhance energy savings. If buildings are dynamic, if buildings actually follow dynamic cycles, they don't have to be over-regulated. Well, we don't need energy. Just maybe comfort is not satisfactory, not healthy. And also, actually, it's comfort the problem of energy demand. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell into this. For years, I've used this image to conclude my presentations. Energy versus human, the deterministic and very nice contour of energy calculation and the blurry edges of humans. Now that I talk about comfort, satisfaction, and health and well-being, is more this. It's a bit of a mess, but it's a fascinating mess, and that we all have to try to resolve to make better buildings for the future. Thank you.